G'day everyone, Paul here from Small Crown Productions. Welcome to the Business of Art and welcome to 2021. Happy New Year to you. Hope you've had a really great night and that your new year is kicking off better than 2020's been. So it's a new year, it's a new focus. It's time to, get started. It is day one, 2021, and there is no time like the present to kick things off. So what I want to cover off in today's live stream is just three really quick tips on working towards financial peace. Super important, particularly for us if we're trying to work as creative people and work towards freelance lifestyles and building towards having a profitable, sustainable, creative business. So a couple of things that you need to do that I constantly work through that I think are super important, that are going to help you move towards having a greater sense of financial peace and allow you the freedom and the mental freedom to actually focus on other things that are going to help grow your business. So let's get into it. Number one is know your number. I've talked about this a couple of times before. It's really important for you to know what it costs you to live every day, each week, each month, each quarter. And a lot of people don't think about that. They just live their life, spend the money, the bills come in, they pay them, but they don't take note of how much it actually costs them to live. And so by sitting down and working through that and knowing what it is actually costing you to live month to month, quarter to quarter, gives you an understanding of how much money you need to earn, whether that's through freelance work or through a day job, so that you have enough to survive. We often are funding our creative work out of our day jobs and that sort of thing. And if you're doing that and you're just constantly scraping money from wherever you can, it's hard. It's really hard. And one of the ways that you can make that a little bit easier on yourself is to know how much it costs you to live, so that you know how much work you have to do, how much day job work, how much freelance work you've got to do to cover that. And then you can really focus on building out other work that's going to help bring in the money. Now, whether that's other work through, a second job or your freelance work or, some kind of online business that you're doing to generate income, you can assign that income directly to your creative work. So know your number, and just as importantly, know the flow of that number. So I know for me, this time of year is actually one of the worst couple of months financially for us, not just because of Christmas and not just because of the New Year Christmas break, that, in a day job, if you're working casually, you might get more hours, but, given 2020, you might get less. But for us, we've got a rates bill that comes in, electricity comes in generally around the 20th of December. We've got a gas bill that comes in. So all of these bills, just that quarter just happens to end December, January. And so this particular couple of months are always really tough. So I make sure that I put a little bit more money aside in the lead up to these months, so that when those bills come in, I can just pay them and I don't have to stress too much about it. This year's a little bit different, obviously. COVID's kind of hit us a bit hard, and we're running to the line, but we're covered, and it's important to do that because that just creates stress. So know your number and know the flow of that number. Do you have peaks and troughs throughout the year, so that, sometimes you've got 3 or 4 big bills that come through on those quarterly bills, might come through for utilities and that sort of thing. And do you have troughs where you're not paying as much outgoings, which means that you can actually bank some of your income to help cover that in the peak months when you've got additional expenses? So know your number and know the flow. Number 2, create an emergency fund. Dave Ramsey is the owner of Financial Peace. He wrote the book Financial Peace, and he is a massive advocate for this, as is anyone that deals in financial control. And I should flag, I'm not a financial advisor. These are just 3 tips that I've learned, obviously watching and reading other people's content that are experts in this field, people like Dave Ramsey and MikeMichalowicz, who's a great entrepreneur, not a financial advisor, but a really, multi-business entrepreneur that wrote the book. What's the book that he wrote? I will find it and put it in the chat, in the description below later. But an excellent book about managing your money as an entrepreneur. But all of these guys, anyone that's really kind of talking about financial peace and working your way towards financial peace, talk about putting together an emergency fund. And to start with, Dave Ramsey suggests that you start with $1,000. Put $1,000 of liquid cash in a bank account as an emergency fund, and then work your way towards 3 to 6 months living expenses. Now, this is super important to bring you peace. There is just nothing better than having something go wrong and knowing that you can just pay for it without having to think. Whether that's an appliance that breaks down, or your car that breaks down, or maybe the car key gets lost on your way to a gig. And so when you get back to your car at 9:30 that night after getting off the bus, you can't get into your car, and the next day have to call a key guy out to replace the key for your car. Something like that might happen, but knowing that money is in a bank account, liquid cash ready to go, that you can just go, it's paid for. It just removes so much stress. So I cannot suggest hard enough, I can't suggest it enough, to put together an emergency fund and start with $1,000. And you would be surprised, if you really dedicate yourself to it, how fast you can get $1,000 in a bank account and just have it sit there in case something goes wrong. Now, obviously, $1,000 isn't going to be enough for a major expense. It's a starting point. It's amazing how things just seem to calm down a little bit when there is that buffer there. Obviously, work towards that 3 to 6 months living expenses like the big kind of guys talk about. But as a starting point, $1,000 is an amazing thing to start with. So recommend that. Point number 2, create an emergency fund. And number 3, again, this actually comes from Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace, is to start focusing on paying off debt as fast as you can. And the way that he suggests to do this is what he calls the debt snowball, which is to attack your smallest debt first, irrespective of the interest rate. Now, there is another style called the debt avalanche, which is to pay off the highest interest rate debt first. Now, the reason Dave Ramsey talks about doing the debt snowball is because he has spent, 30 years working with people on this, and he has found that the great majority of people respond better to the debt snowball because of the win that you get quickly by paying off the smallest debt first, and it actually inspires you to keep paying off the debt. So you pay off the first debt, and then you take the money that you were paying off that debt, and you now apply it to the minimum payment that you're paying off the second debt. So say you've got 2 credit cards, you would pay the minimum off your second credit card while you're crushing the debt on the first one, but then you would take all of the money that you were paying on that first credit card, add it to the monthly account, monthly minimum that you're sort of paying on the second credit card, and pay all of that on the second, and snowball that payment until, if there's a third and a fourth, right through up until, maybe a house loan or something like that. And so the reason that he suggests the snowball is because human behavior is triggered, and our habits are that we respond to positive things. So when you feel great about paying off that first debt, you want to pay off the next one, and you have a much better chance of snowballing that through. So that is his recommendation. If you are super disciplined and you can actually do the debt avalanche, then by all means. But Dave Ramsey is a bit of an expert. Guy knows his stuff, and he's been dealing with people for 30 years. So if it's something that you struggle with, flip the switch on it and possibly try paying off the debts in the debt snowball style. So that's it. 3 really quick tips. This was just a super quick video tonight to try and just start doing a little bit more live streaming and quicker content. So number 1, know your number and know the flow of your number. Number 2, create an emergency fund. And number 3, focus hard on paying off debt as quick as you can. And those 3 things, just as a starting point, will be some amazing steps towards better financial peace. Let's start 2021 off the right way, and let's start actually taking control of some of these things that can elude us quite easily. Thanks very much. I'll see you on the next one.